In the last section, we finished up our artist model. So we've now got our artist model, our album schema, and the two of them are wired together successfully. Now, we've only put together the models, so I don't really expect any part of my application to be quite working just yet. We actually have to put together all of our queries before any of that stuff's going to start working. Nonetheless, I really encourage you to flip over to the application as it's running. Remember that you can stop it and start it at any time from the console. I can stop it by hitting Control-C, like so, that'll stop it. And I can start it back up by running npm run start. So when I run npm run start, we're going to get a little bit of a boot up process. This window will come up, it'll be a white screen for a second, and in the background I'll wait for a webpack is valid message. Yep, there it is. And now over in the window again, I can go up to view, hit reload, and in just a second, or maybe, okay, there we go. I see everything pop up, very good. Now the one thing that I want you to do really quick is to, in the terminal, make sure that you don't have any errors inside of here. If you make any typo at any point in time, you'll see it appear as a big red error message inside of here. So scroll up to the error message, see if you can't find it, and figure out what's going on and do a little bit of troubleshooting. It's most likely that you might have a typo as you're going through all these, these exercises. If you can't troubleshoot the issue, if it's just kind of not quite, you can't quite make sense of it, feel free to reach out to me and I'll help you troubleshoot the issue. Of course, you can always pull down the project files and compare your code line by line. Okay, so we're done with our first two and only models, which means that it's now time to start working on our first query. So inside of my queries directory, I'm going to find my find artist file. Now the purpose of each of these so-called query files is to take in some arguments, manipulate our database in some way, and then return a promise that resolves with some amount of data. So that is going to be a common thread through every single one of these queries that we write. We'll take in some arguments, do some database operation, and then return the result. Okay, so that's the very common thread through each of these. So the first one we're going to be working on is find artist. The purpose of find artist, or this function that we're going to be working on inside of here, is to find a single artist in the artist collection. So in our last application, we had a collection of users. We were always working with users. This time around, we're working with a collection of so-called artists. Now, when we find a single artist, we want to find a very particular artist, the one that is indicated by this ID argument. So in the life cycle of this application we're working on, at some point in time, this function will be called with the ID of a very particular artist. It is up to you to write some code inside of here that is going to reach into the user collection, find the artist with this particular ID, and then return it out of here, okay? So for this first time around, I just want to give you a little bit of a hint just to put you on the right path here, just to show you the kind of general structure. Inside of every test that we wrote, we were saying something like artist.find or remove or update, whatever it was. And then for the purposes of our test, we would always chain on a .then, right? Like in every case, we always added on the .then. The purpose of the .then was so that we could immediately make an assertion about what this query right here was returning. In this application, however, some other part of the code base is going to chain on the .then for us. So what I'm trying to say here is that in the vast majority of these exercises that we're going to go through, you probably do not have to chain on the .then. And that's why the comment on here specifically says a promise that resolves with the artist. So you're not going to try to return the actual artist itself. You just want to make the query and then return it, and some other part of the application will receive that query and resolve it in some fashion. Okay, so just to make sure we're clear. The second thing that I want to point out to you is that almost every function that we write, and actually let me take that back, every single function we write, every last one, you need to make sure that you at some point in time return a query. Okay, so make sure that you always get that return keyword in here. You are always going to be using the return keyword because we are including the curly braces on every one of these functions. Unlike the tests that we were writing where sometimes we would omit the curly braces. And when we were doing that, we got the implicit return, which is part of the fat arrow function. Okay. So in summary, remember, always toss on that return keyword. Okay. So I'm going to clear this thing out. And for this first exercise, I know we did a lot of lead up here. In the future, we won't have to do quite so much. I just want to make sure we're on the same page for this first exercise. So give this your best shot. Again, your job is to find a single artist in the artist collection using this very particular ID. So give it a shot. We'll come back in the next section and go over a solution.